Good evening all. I'm Aditi Lamba with the Tuesday night edition of South Asian News, Vision of Asia. We are coming to you from our studio in New York City. Welcome to the show. Let's begin the episode taking a look at the coronavirus pandemic and its impact. The world has surpassed 219 million cases of COVID-19 with more than 4 million deaths. India, home to many of our viewers, has surpassed 33 million COVID-19 cases with at least 441,000 deaths. The country is expecting a third wave of the coronavirus, but experts hope for it to be far less deadly with the increase in vaccination across India. More than half of Indian adults there at least have been partly vaccinated. Here in the United States, today we marked another grim milestone, reaching more than 40 million COVID-19 cases and at least 649,000 deaths. This comes as cases and hospitalizations continue to surge across unvaccinated communities, about 12 cases of every 100 cases. The Delta variant is also continuing to spread rigorously with more potential surges after this past long Labor Day weekend. On vaccines and more, 53% of the US population is now fully vaccinated, and again, we'd like to encourage all our viewers to get the COVID-19 vaccines. Visit vaccines.gov. With that, let's now begin tonight's news segment and take a look at the headlines coming in. Texas Governor Abbott signs restrictive voting laws, Rohit, Vyas, New Jersey. United States surpasses 40 million coronavirus cases, Dr. Tushar, Patel, New Jersey. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings release in theaters featuring Awkwafina. Time for a short break on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. And welcome back. I'm Aditi Lama and this is Vision of Asia, Tuesday night episode of South Asian News. On coronavirus updates and measures, cases are rising at a speed higher than before, with the Delta variant proving to be very dangerous and transmissible. Oregon and Idaho are among states that are now running out of ICU beds and ventilators. These states are in a state of emergency. Today, hospitals in Alabama observed a minute of silence for all the people the state has lost to COVID-19. Meanwhile, cases in children are on a rise as well, with students going back to in-person schools without COVID-19 vaccine, as many are not eligible yet. Back to school also has continued to see the debate on mask and vaccine mandates in schools. On vaccines, more than 53% of the US population is now fully vaccinated, and again, we'd like to encourage all our viewers to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Visit vaccine.gov. We now have a conversation on COVID-19 updates with ITV Gold Senior Health Expert Dr. Tushar Patel. Here is Dr. Patel. Doctor, today some stats are coming in where we are looking at more than 40 million COVID-19 cases total in the country. We have surpassed 40 million, which means 1 in every 8 people has had or has COVID. How troublesome is this statistics, and how worried should we be right now?
Very troublesome. In fact, one statistics I would like to give is 1,500 Americans are dying every day for past few weeks. Specifically, some states, Oregon, Idaho, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, and Florida. These 8 states consist of 75 million people. And only 1,400 ICU beds are available in those states. So we can imagine what's going on in the country right now.
Right. And let's talk about these states a little bit. I believe some are running out of ICU beds. Some have already run out of ventilators. I believe you have colleagues in these states. Can you tell us what is happening there right now? What kind of news are you getting, and what is the true condition of the medical community?
So the ICU beds definitely are a huge concern right now. PPEs, oxygen supplies, ventilators, all those are very scarce in those states, because when there are no ICU beds available, you cannot treat not only the COVID patients, but other patients who are suffering from cardiovascular disease or other motor vehicle accident or many other medical emergencies which requires ICU beds. And if you don't have the ICU beds available, then it's going to be impact to all cases coming to the hospitals.
What do you think these governments in these states need to do right now in order to, curb this spread right now?
So the governor needs to understand that the pandemic is still on.
Right.
They need to provide the leadership to save their citizens from getting into the ICUs and getting have the mortality cases. The government needs to communicate truthfully with their citizens, irrespective of their political or personal views, and ensure that their citizens are safe. So in that case, they need to ensure that all the citizens in their states are fully vaccinated. That we have the tool available right now to get the vaccination done. And if we don't use that tool, I think we will be in huge trouble coming in the winter months.
And when you are talking about trouble, doctor, let's talk about the states that are vaccinated or where a higher population is vaccinated, like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. How long do we have before we start getting affected as bad as some of these other states?
As soon as the fall and the winter month hits in, I think we will see a different picture if we don't have the good control overall in this country with the vaccination rate. As you know, more than 150,000 daily cases happening in the US, 4 million cases in last 4 weeks. So you can imagine what's going on right now at almost end of the summer. And when the fall and the winter month kicks in, I think we will see a different kind of picture in this country.
And hospitalization rates amongst children and younger adults, adults under the age of 50, again, we're seeing high levels of those cases. What is the biggest, issue regarding that? And when you're looking at children, are these cases rising because the schools have opened?
So there are two things. Not all kids are eligible to get the vaccine. So
right.
Kids under 12 is a huge concern, right? And the schools are opening. Some states already had the school open in middle of August. So these are the cases we are seeing right now, the huge surge in the number of COVID cases in the young individuals. And that's because they are not fully protected yet. And the second is they're going back to the classroom setting.
In politics, today, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law a new bill that restricts voting, especially for communities of color. Democrats of the state, in an attempt to halt this bill, had earlier blocked this bill by fleeing the state for weeks. Here is what is this in the bill. It bans 24-hour voting. It bans drive-through voting. It has mandated new vote-by-mail ID and is also empowering poll watchers. This comes after the state signed by far one of the most restrictive abortion laws, which nearly bans abortion in the state of Texas. It prohibits more abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. On this and much more, we spoke with ITV Go senior political commentator Mr. Rohit Vyas. Here is Mr. Vyas. Actually deals with the state of Texas. Today, the state of Texas came up with these new voting restrictive laws. They are calling it the voting integrity laws, where they are trying to maintain the integrity of voting in the state. But these are very restrictive especially towards communities of color. Meanwhile, Texas also came up with one of the most strict abortion laws seen in this country, restricting pregnancy at the 6 weeks part. How are you looking at this? Why is this happening, and how is this being approved?
Very simple. It's a very strong neoconservative movement, a right-wing movement, to put it very simply, that is gaining ground now. There are many anti-abortionists, for instance, in the case of the abortion law. There are many anti-abortionists who have long wanted to reverse Roe v. Wade, which allowed women, rule over their own bodies and decisions over their own bodies a long time ago. And they want to reverse that and make it a highly conservative society as it were. And I think they've begun to gain ground in a place like Texas, for instance, a southern state that has large pockets of conservative populations and who believe in much of this, and that's what it is. There's also the conservatives who believe that there should be more voting restrictions, especially after the Trump situation, where they thought that the election was taken away from Donald Trump, which is not the case at all. And so these movements have been gaining footholds at the grassroots level and seem to be gaining ground now as we move forward. I consider this a very ominous trend for the rest of the country, although much of the rest of the country will not probably follow suit. But you've got the Supreme Court in play in a state like Texas in the abortion case, for instance, where the Supreme Court decided it wouldn't take any action to halt Texas from opening up lawsuits just about by anybody against anyone who sought to get an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, or anyone who seeks to help anyone, even inadvertently. For instance, an Uber driver driving a woman to an abortion clinic unbeknownstly, and that person then goes in for an abortion, that Uber driver will be held responsible. So this is a rather dangerous development in terms of law and how law will be implemented.
So let me ask you something. As a woman living in Texas, how should you be looking at this?
We'll have to ask the women living in Texas, but as a man looking at women living in Texas and those who might want freedom of choice, it's a very difficult situation for them. I expect many of them will start to cross border lines and go somewhere else to get an abortion if they have to. And by the way, these laws also affect those who have been impregnated through incest or rape and all the rest of it. It's not like there's any exceptions, that are being made for women. It's basically the concept of life. When is the embryo actually a living creature, living human being? And that's what this whole argument has been about by the conservatives and those who are pro-choice. And so it's going to be a very difficult situation for women, but I expect in the immediate aftermath, if there is enough enforcement at the state level, and if there are enough abortion clinics that are scared and don't want to carry out any procedures, then a lot of women will be crossing state boundaries to do what they have to do.
Yeah, very troublesome. We don't talk about male reproductive rights, but we love to talk about women reproductive rights. Another place where women's rights are being challenged and threatened is Afghanistan. We're hearing about protests of women happening, hundreds of women coming out trying to demand whatever they had achieved in the last 20 years, trying to maintain all the achievements that they have made as women of Afghanistan. How are you looking at the situation? Also, please tell us about the details you're getting from the region. What is happening there right now? All the troops have been pulled out. Evacuations are still taking place on a smaller level for people that are still left there. But how is the environment there? And, what is the Taliban doing?
First of all, on the women's protests, very interesting development. And it was interesting to hear at least one woman I heard on CNN, I believe it was today, or the BBC. I think it was on the BBC, actually, I heard her, where she was saying, look, we're a new generation of women now. We're a new generation of Afghans. 20 years ago was a different story. But today, you, the Taliban, can't dictate to us what we're supposed to do with our lives, etc., etc. You may think you're in control, but you're not. We're the people of Afghanistan. We're the women of Afghanistan, and we're going to demand our rights. And we are, once again, to remind you, a new generation. I thought that was very, very resonating, that this young lady who was speaking, and of course her identity was blurred so that there would be no repercussions against her, but she was speaking very vociferously, very vehemently about her rights. And so were many other women, and so were many other young men as well. And that's a very good sign for Afghanistan. Now, as to the ground situation over there, have been, we've been getting reports of flights that have been sitting stranded basically on the tarmac in Mazar-e-Sharif. And those were supposed to be evacuation flights arranged through third parties, such as Qatar, such as the United Nations. There are also United Nations officials who are coming into Afghanistan on special flights for negotiations with the Taliban to talk about humanitarian aid, etc., etc. We're not yet sure how safe everybody is when they get in there and how safe they are, safely they can get out as well. But it doesn't look too good because by all accounts, many people are being stopped. Now, the Taliban say we're stopping only those who don't have proper paperwork. But that does not seem to be the case entirely, because many of those in Mazar-e-Sharif, for instance, do have the proper paperwork. Many have American citizenship, we hear. Many have other nationality citizenship. And they're all sitting there stranded at the airport. They've been deplaned. Many of them were on planes waiting and couldn't get out, and haven't been able to get out for about a week now, we believe. So the situation is very much fluid. Now, the Taliban spokesman addressed a news conference with the international press this morning and this evening, Afghan time, where he asserted the fact that there is no government and they were trying to put a government in place. Right. And therefore, they've just announced a caretaker government to sort of get things in order. But the problem here is the world is taking the Taliban at its word. All right. Now, can you trust the Taliban? I don't think you can. The other interesting thing that was happening was, if you heard the protesters, they were all, shouting slogans against Pakistan. And many of them came on television saying that the Pakistan and the ISI of Pakistan were involved in supporting the Taliban. And for instance, in Panjshir, which is a mountainous region not far from Kabul, about 60 miles, I believe, northeast of Kabul, the Panjshir Valley was holding out. There are a lot of soldiers, former Afghan troops who are there. There are many rebels who are there, led by Ahmad Massoud, the son of Ahmad Shah Massoud, who was assassinated in Paris just a few days before September 11th in 2001. And he was the man who led the movement again to get the Soviets out. So this is his son leading that movement. Now we hear the Taliban claim to have taken over Panjshir. The protesters in Kabul were supporting the holdouts in Panjshir, saying, leave them alone, they are going to be our leaders, etc. So very interesting dynamic playing out in Afghanistan. But interestingly, the Afghan people in these protests accusing Pakistan directly and its intelligence wing, the ISI, of being behind putting the Taliban there in power.
And it's time for another short break on Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. Again, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back. I'm Aditi Lamba, and this is Vision of Asia, South Asian News segment. New American superhero film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings has been released in theaters near you. 25th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Shang-Chi has been produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studio Motion Pictures. Directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, the superhero movie stars Simu Liu as Shang-Chi alongside Awkwafina and legendary actor Tony Leung. In the movie, Shang-Chi is forced to confront his past after being drawn into his father's Ten Rings organization. The movie features action, stunning visuals, and the MCU's signature spectacle with humor. Also, Shang-Chi is the first Marvel movie in an Asian American superhero and has brought much attention to representation and its impact. Recently, we had the opportunity to talk to the cast and director of Shang-Chi on the effect of having the first Asian American superhero finally, especially for the younger members of the community. We have tonight a conversation with actress, comedian, rapper, and TV host Awkwafina. Here is the conversation. Awkwafina, welcome to ITV Gold. It's so awesome to have an Asian American actor here with us on our South Asian network. I hope you're doing well. My first question to you has to be, how much of Katie is you, and what elements of your personality do you think you had in you to build this character?
We make a good team.
Some days at work are harder than others.
We're working with world-class stunt teams. Their work ethic, everything that they're doing is like incredible to witness.
Oh, wow. I feel like a lot of Katie felt very close to me. I think Destin wanted to make Katie a little bit more my own personality, and I would read the lines sometimes in the morning and I'd just crack up. I think that she is full of joy, I think. And I think that's maybe how I am. So it's good.
Right. I have to ask you about this. Katie's character evolves through the movie. Without giving too much information about the movie here, what do you have to say about that? And how important do you think that evolvement was for her character?
Well, I think she definitely evolves throughout the movie. I think that, it starts with her learning that the world in front of her is a lot bigger than she thought. And I think that changes her whole outlook on maybe her own priorities, her own life. And I think that, she really demonstrates this kind of fierce loyalty of her friend and understanding of like what he's going through. And I really respect that about her.
I have to ask you, what do you feel about being in the MCU, the spectacle that, Daniel has created? How does that make you feel?
Wow, I mean, it's really cool. I think, just even the filming process in when you're in the MCU, it really is another world. And it felt like so magical just see all of this happen literally before your eyes, to like this amazing premiere that we had, that I think was one of the first ones back. And it just feels really good to watch it. It feels big. It feels like something we need right now. So it's really special.
The movie features not only just almost an all-Asian cast, but also crew. We are seeing a lot of people behind the camera that are, Asian. How important do you think that step was for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to showcase and to produce? And how important do you think it is for all of us to see that?
I think it's always really important. I think, definitely when it comes to representation in front and behind the camera, it's very important that we're telling stories that have, authentic kind of roots. And also, I think on this movie, I've worked with some Asian Americans that I like in roles. Like we had an Asian American first AD, which was I've never worked with an Asian American first AD. It was very cool. So we definitely had like a really amazing crew, like from all across the world. I think it's just really important always to have that balance in front and behind. Yeah.
How was it learning archery in the movie?
That was crazy. It was really nuts. Because I had lessons, and I just kept thinking about, one of my idols, Gina Davis, and how like she's like an Olympic archer. And I was like, man, Gina Davis does this and I can't even pull a string back. And it's so cool. So it was fun to like learn something else for once. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I have to ask you about the bus scene again. Very comical, very action-packed. What was the brief given to you and what was going through your mind when you were filming that?
I just remember thinking like, all I'm doing really is just driving a bus. Well, and there's so much going on behind me. There's so many, like there's like really intense things going on. I mean, I'm just driving the bus, So I just wanted to be there to make sure everyone else was all right.
The world has no idea what they're up for.
It's time for you to take your place by my side. That's not going to happen.
Well, with this, we wrap up our show for the night. Please send us your suggestions and get your voices and organizations on our show. Email us on events@itvgold.com or follow us on Facebook @itvgold. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch many of our popular shows for free. Thank you for joining us tonight from Queens, New York. This is Vision of Asia, and I'm Niti Lamba. Take care and be well.